This is the UC Hunting Properties Podcast, your home for all things recreational land. Our goal, to help you stand on your investment. Hey guys, welcome back to the UC Hunting Properties Podcast. Like I said, special guest today, my good buddy Greg Glesinger of HuntWorks TV, formerly of Drury Outdoors, which is why the guy doesn't need much of an introduction. He kills absolute pigs. Greg lives, breathes, eats this stuff. At this point, I would call it part of his DNA. But I've known Greg for a long time. Actually got to kind of be buddies with him probably 20 years ago, shed hunting one of his farms. So without further ado, Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Kurt. It's been a while since we've had the pleasure of connecting. It's always connecting through text messages, but not face-to-face. Our lives are so busy doing what we really are passionate about doing, which is what we're about to talk about. But
well, it's kind
glad
of funny,
to be here, man.
Kind of funny too, Greg, because I swear I probably have a friend group that's 50 dudes deep that we may not literally communicate for months on end, and then hunt season rolls around and it's like bam, 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 bam. Everybody wants to know what's shaking.
That is absolutely fact.
Yes.
You can't deny any of that. It's so true, but it's because we're freaking all nutcases, man. Let's just be honest about it.
Greg, I gave you a little opening, but I'd love you to at least start with your background. I love it. Obviously, I know it, and I feel like it's going to resonate with the listeners, but I also feel like that's why you've had so much success in outdoor TV, is because I feel like, I don't want to say a normal dude, but like I'm going to say a normal dude, you fit that mold to me with your background and stuff. So I'm not going to steal your thunder, dude. Give us a little of your background.
Sure. So born and raised in Papillion, Nebraska, and I was basically hunting pheasant and quail my whole I guess younger side of life through my uncle Jerry, and God bless him, he's no longer with us, but he had three boys, Jim, John, and Jeff, and those guys really took me under their wing and gave me what I knew about on the outdoor space. And we used to hunt pheasant and quail as much as we could at the early ages of 8 for me, and going all the way up until my early 20s.
Sure.
And then in college and late high school, I got into waterfowl really heavy. And then I really didn't get into big game hunting until I met my wife's, who, at the time, she was my girlfriend, but her brother, John, in Akeley, Minnesota. And it was my first time I ever met him. And he was in his backyard shooting a bow, brand new Fred bow, just got it. And
Nice.
We're about the same height. And he said, "You ever shot one?" And I said, "No, I didn't know anything about it." And I cut that first arrow loose, and I think my body language said something, because the girlfriend, now wife, looked at me, Lisa, and said, "You don't need another hobby." Well, that moment in time,
If
I think
she only knew.
Yeah, I had no idea where it was going to take me, but that moment, I think I shot his bow more that weekend than he did. And I came home and just dove myself into bow hunting. How do I start? What do I do? And
Sure.
I was lucky enough to hook up with a Little John's Archery, which is now a third generation archery store in Marshall, Wisconsin. And they really showed me everything I needed to know really fast. Without those guys, I don't think I would have any clue what I was doing. And so they were very helpful. And that was the start of the journey.
Yeah.
And now we're, 25 plus years later, and a hell of a lot of mistakes and a hell of a lot of pitfalls. But I think I was on another call here just before this one, and he says, "What do you think your biggest lesson is, or how'd you curve to where you are now?" And I said, "It's failure."
Yeah.
And a lot of it. And, winning is great and success is great, but you don't learn anything from those. You learn from when you make all the, the mistakes and the failures. And I made a lot of them.
Yeah.
And the difference is, regrouping and reassessing. And now I was lucky enough to meet Mark through a, I won't give you the full story because we don't have time, but through a mutual friend. And, the old saying is,
the mad scientist.
Yeah, I mean, he's debatably one of the best in the space. And the old saying is, if you want to be good at something, surround yourself with people who you want to be or be like.
Yep.
And I was lucky enough to hang out with Mark, and he taught me probably more than what he forgot, probably. Um,
Well, I'm a
and
big believer in steel sharpens steel, and if you want to know the deer game in outdoor TV, that's the sharpest blade there is.
yeah, he's extremely talented and very, very passionate about it. And I was blessed enough to be part of the DOD team, Drury Outdoors team, for 14, 15 years. I'm losing track of time. And, about year 3 or year 4, when I was lucky enough to be in the room with Mark and Terry and Jay Gregory and Jared Lurk and God, we can go right down the list of all these guys that
Some
were
of the
there.
OGs, yeah.
Some of the OGs, that's right. Paul Thornton, I don't know if that name rings a
Yep.
bell.
Yep.
And 3 years later, Mark's like, "Man, you don't talk much." And I said, "Mark, I don't have anything to add with these many people in the group. You got 2 ears and one mouth. Use it in that order." And that gave me a curve of time that I think, without question, that's put me where I am today because of those opportunities.
Sure, sure, sure. And I do want to mention this, Greg. You gave a little shout out to, I think you said Little John's
Yeah.
over there in Wisconsin, your pro shop, and I want to hit on that just for a second,
Okay. Okay.
because I think that's a very important factor to a lot of people's journeys. And like you said, you grew up bird hunting, but the big game thing and bow hunting in particular was foreign to you. But yet your local pro shop, who's really, they fostered it, they helped you, they in essence trained you. And I want to give a shout out not just to Little John's, but pro shops in general, because to me, I mean, I think you know this, Greg, but that's my background as well. And I had a
Yeah. Yeah.
similar
Yeah.
experience here in Iowa with Denny Dreyer was a great guy, hooked me up. Same thing. I felt like he kind of put me under his wing. But I also think it's kind of a lost art. I think a lot of people get very, hey, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do my own thing. And I think the art of having that relationship with your pro shop or, your archery pro, to me, it's as important as having a relationship with like a mechanic or a plumber or, somebody you trust in a trade that's a little foreign to you. Like, you put a lot of trust in those guys. It could be your wealth management guy or financial advisor. But I didn't want to just glaze over that. I think that's super important. And the fact that they're third generation, those dudes are doing something right. Like,
Well, it's at the point now. I mean, early on, and it was funny because they gave me so much knowledge. Nobody touches my bow but that place.
yep,
It's because they built so much trust, and I trust them, and what they say, I don't question. Okay, well, that's what you think we need to do. Then let's do that.
yep,
Because you can't be an expert at everything, and they
can't.
see X number of bows every single day. They see the failures, the mistakes, and how they fix them. So why am I going to argue with a guy that has that much experience? And they're now third generation. I mean, the knowledge and history is just so deep. It's just, and
What?
I'm lucky it's only 10 miles, 15 miles from my house.
Yeah, it speaks volumes. And I guess the key takeaway in this little, sidebar, and I didn't mean to veer off completely, but I thought it was important. If you're not supporting your local shop, you need to.
I completely ditto everything you just said.
Perfect. All right, Greg, appreciate the snapshot in time. Obviously, like I said, I felt like I didn't even have to introduce you because unless you live under a rock, Greg, you blow up social media almost every year, if not multiple times a year, because you're, historically speaking, you're doing it at a level now that's kind of uncharted waters. I mean, I could count on one hand how many guys are having the repeat success you're having, which kind of brings us to you and HuntWorks. I mean, tell us about HuntWorks. Where did this come from? I love the concept, but
Um, it, it we had so much success, and shout out to Drury Outdoors. They taught me where I am and everything, and we got to a certain point where they have producer of the year and all kinds of different awards, and we had won everything multiple times. And it wasn't that I was unhappy. It was just that I took it as far as that we could go. And when you film and you hunt and you do all those things, it's very time consuming. It's a lot of work. and I was getting to a point in my life. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And we just I decided to part ways myself, not because I was unhappy or dissatisfied. It just kind of run its course. It was there, almost a decade and a half, basically,
Yep.
for round math. It just kind of faded to black just because of new circumstances.
Yeah.
And
Changes over time.
Yeah, and so I just kind of gave notice, and it was a fair parting way. I had no desire to do my own thing at the time. Zero, actually. It wasn't even part of the plan until the word got out that I left. And there might be a guy that I'm talking to right now that actually said, "Hey, I heard a rumor that you left." And I said, "Yeah, that's true." And due to your phone call, there's many phone calls that string because of it. Element was one, and Expedition was another, and we could go right down all those long lists. And then within a month's time, I had about 12 or 13 partners that called and said, "Hey, is this rumor true? Did you leave?" And I said, "I did." And they said, "What's your plan?" I said, "Nothing." And they're like, "Well, if you decide to do something, we want to be a part of it."
Yeah.
And with your help, and obviously Chris Cobbett and Mark Heck and the rest of the team at Expedition Media and Element, and we can go down the list. But they really convinced me to say, "Hey, you really need to reconsider." And I said, "Well, the front of the camera I can do, the back of the camera I have no knowledge of."
Yeah,
Which is
not
the
my
business.
world, right?
Yeah, I had no exposure to it. And so Mark Heck and Chris Cobbett said, "Hey, you know what? You commit to us, we'll commit to you. We'll give you some guidance and hold your hand through this process." And frankly, without those two guys, I fairly certain this wouldn't have happened, because I was fine with the frontal lens. I just didn't want to take the backside, and I didn't have no way of navigating it. So
Sure.
they convinced me, and once I said yes to that, the dominoes fell, and then we had to come up with a concept. And I always had a concept on the back of my head for years. And now I was like, okay, let's bring it to foresight. And then it's funny how timing all happens. And then Matt and Adam called me and said, "Hey, you left. What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know, but it's funny that you're the 20th phone call I've taken.
Right.
We would sure like to do something with you. Do you have any ideas?" And I said, "Well, matter of fact, I have an idea. This is what I would do, and it's the only way I'm going to do it if I do it." Because I just didn't want to be another hunting show, because there's a lot of them out there. But and that's no disrespect. It's just that I didn't want to fall in line. I want to do something different. And
No, and
so,
I'm glad you said that, Greg, because I do feel like some of it's, and same thing. This isn't a rip on any particular show, but some of it has got very, very cookie cutter.
it's very vanilla.
Yeah, very vanilla is a good way to put it, and that's why I have a lot of intrigue, and I love what you guys are doing, because directionally, the educational aspect of what you guys are doing, to me, is what probably clicks the best, and that's, I'm not saying I'm super experienced, but I mean, I feel like I have maybe a little more advanced understanding of the big picture, and you guys are doing a great job painting that. So,
well, we try, and I appreciate that. And that was my number one goal. I said, "Guys, I am not a Michael Waddell. I'm not funny. I'm not great looking. Well, you got to call it what it is." I said, but what we do have is we kill a lot of mature stuff, and Matt and Adam are very good in their space as well with Land and Legacy. They bring a lot of stuff to the table at a much more deeper granular level than I do when it comes to habitat and species and
dude, they can
so
nerd
forth.
out with the best of them.
They can. And so I'm like, okay, if we figure out a plan, and by the end of the call, they're like, "Oh, we're in." It was done at hello.
Fun
And they're
fact,
like,
did you know those guys used to be at United Country?
I did know that.
Okay, fair enough.
I
I just had to throw it out there. I
No,
can't
no, I
take
did know
credit for
that.
their success, but I think that's cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's funny how it's a small circle. So it was just a concept, and the Sportsman's Channel was a hard sell because we were new, and they don't like taking news shows on because we didn't have a YouTube channel.
Right.
And we pitched them the concept, and I think the reason why we got in is because it was different. And we actually Did extremely well season 1. Now we're halfway through season 2 on the Sportsman's Channel, and now we're starting filming on season 3. So it's gone way bigger than my expectations. It's way harder than my expectations, in my understanding. And it's way more difficult than I ever thought. If someone decides to try to go do their own TV show, I'd tell you right now not to do it, because it is a ton more work than what it looks like on the surface.
Right.
There's no way you're going to pull it off. Now, to go do a YouTube channel is a different conversation.
Right. And to your point, I mean, it's two very unique channels, but like to me, they're starting to like just interblend, right? If you don't have one, you don't have the other, and kind of vice versa. You knew which guy was hunting Kansas or Iowa or Missouri. Like you had it all scripted, and I feel like a lot of that kind of got thrown out the window in the last 5-6 years for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Just because, just you can ask yourself this own question: how often does your TV get turned on in your own household?
Right. Well, and it's funny because even when I'm on watching TV, I'm on YouTube. I'm on my YouTube channel watching my TV because we all want instant gratification, right?
Like you want to watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it.
And I want it to be relevant to now, which means stuff needs to be relatively current.
Yeah.
My wife and I were just talking about this last night, and I'm sure you've seen the freak elk that Lee Lakoski just took in Montana. Mm-hmm. Like I'm chomping at the bit for him to drop at least some of that footage because that bull elk's insane.
It's true. Yeah, it's become what the society expects now.
Yeah,
which is more demanding on the people trying to produce it.
Right. Well, and even to, I don't want to say to have the wherewithal, but like you got to be thinking about that in the moment too. It's not like, I mean, a lot of this stuff's semi-live.
Almost, yeah, almost.
Here's the other thing that intrigues me so much about what you're doing, Greg. I mean, you've been very successful, obviously, in the outdoor space. You've been successful professionally. And obviously, a lot of times those kind of go hand in hand. But the one thing you said, and this goes eons ago, we were talking about buying land, buying farms, using land kind of as an investment. And like I kind of remember it like yesterday. I'm not saying you went off on a tangent, Greg, but like you gave me probably a 20-minute explanation on your land journey and how early it started in your life and what that looked like and kind of where it's ramped up to now, even outside of hunting, right? As a means to create revenue. And let's talk about that a little bit. And like I said, to me, that's as cool as what you've done in the hunting space.
Yeah, it's, my dad's, to give you a background, my dad still farms today at 84 years old. And he was born and raised he's born and raised behind a tractor. So we lived in town, but we had a farm outside of town. So I was farming at, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, probably. I mean, it was well before my driver's license, helping dad on the farm and, till the ground and do what we never had livestock, but we were always grain farmers. So my knowledge of that was pretty deep and pretty early. And he still is my mentor today when it comes to land and real estate. He's just been doing it his whole life. And so anytime I have questions, he's the first guy I call. But he convinced me in my late teens, early 20s to buy a piece of property. I didn't have the money. And he said, there is no such thing as too young, and you should always start the minute you possibly can. Well, it had enough income, and it paid for itself over time. I got out of college, I sold it.
But this was a straight tillable farm, Greg. Zero hunting appeal. I mean, just
the first one was a lake lot.
Okay.
It was a lake lot, and it was on a lake that he had a private lot on themselves that we used as our family. And he said, that's going up for sale. You know what's going on here. It's going to double or triple in no time. You should do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't have any money. He goes, well, you don't have, you can't afford not to. Well, I took the money that I had from walking beans and shucking corn and all that stuff and threw it down. And then 3 or 4 years, we sold it. And I took that money and rolled it into tillable. And then I took that tillable for the first 40, took its cash rent from the farmer, paid down the note, got to the point where the note was basically zero, took that cash rent, put it in and then the equity against another 80, and then took the 80's rent and the 80 from the 40 to pay down the 80.
Yep.
And I just kept doing this rotation of never touching the equity or the cash rent to live off of, but to basically pay down assets.
Yep.
And 20 some odd years later, 25 years later, it's a full-time job that's really a part-time job, but now it's a full-time job. And it's purely because of letting the money work for you, creating equity, taking loans against that equity, and then obviously building up the assets and using that cash rent to buy more assets.
Yep.
And it's been a fun journey. It's to the point now, Derek, my son, who is now 21, he graduates.
Unbelievable too, but yeah.
Yeah, trust me, because when we met,
He was tiny.
He was 2 or 3 years old,
Yep.
maybe.
Yep.
Now he's graduating from Marquette this winter, December, and then his goal is to take it over because it's getting to the size that it's pretty demanding.
Well, I'm great. So, how do you manage that, Greg? I guess I'm just curious because, I mean, obviously at this point you got a lot of properties, you got a lot of tenants. I mean, there's contracts all over the place. I mean, are you still doing it? Like you're handling it, and obviously he's about to step into it.
Yeah. So the wife handles all the paperwork. I do all the leases. I handle all the conversations and whatever we need to do with the farms, on the boots on the ground to the farm to go talk to the farmer.
Yeah.
The whole 9 yards. And it's just long-standing relationships that I built over the years that a lot of the stuff can be handled over a phone now. Because, Dad's taught me so much that now I'm not saying I'm as good as my dad, but I definitely can carry the weight. I've learned a lot. So,
yep.
We're blessed enough to have really good tenants, and we just have a lot of benchmarks that we follow throughout the year to make sure we're all in check. And the formula's been working, and Derek's goal is to take it over here in the next 6 to 12 months, and I'm glad that passed. But I mean, I'm not going anywhere, but
right.
I want him to be the face to it because that's what he went to school to be. Real estate and entrepreneurship, and so he's actually brought some stuff to the table in the last 6 months that I didn't know.
That's very fitting, though. I mean, I think that's awesome that he studied for real estate and the entrepreneurial side, especially with you being his dad and mentor. I was going to ask Greg on that note, like, is it cookie cutter in how you have leases? I mean, are these guys paying the rent up front across the board? I mean, you know what I mean? I'm just curious.
Yeah, some of them are one lump sum payment in March, and if not, it's March 1st and either October 15th or November 1st.
Yep.
Depends on the size of the farmer. Some of them are very, very large. Some of them are very small. There's a certain way they want to run their operation. So we obviously, work within them, but predominantly it's all of our contracts are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
We've worked through those issues over the years, and I've tweaked the contract where I think it's like 4.5 pages long, but it's not too long. But it definitely helps to have some seasoned unpleasant experiences throughout the year to correct some of those things so we don't have them anymore. So,
sure.
But it's been an amazing experience, and if I said would I do it all over again, I would. If I could do it all over again, I would have bought more.
Yep.
I stretched myself, but I should have stretched myself even more because It seems like the day you buy a property, and I don't care if it was 10 years ago or tomorrow, the buyer always says one thing: I paid too much.
Yep.
Am I ever wrong on that, Kurt?
Other than like a family transaction, where definitively you're buying something at, just say half a current market or.
Well, those are anomalies.
But outside of that, yes, in virtually any real estate transaction, the buyer always thinks they're paying too much, regardless of the deal.
Exactly, and the seller always thinks they sold it too cheap.
Sometimes, yes. And sometimes they know they hit a dinger, right? Like,
Well, that's true. But I'm just going for normal,
yeah.
right? And so it's funny that I told Derek, we were just having this meeting this weekend, getting him taking some stuff over, and I said, he's very interested in Bitcoin, and I said, I just want to break the news to you, buddy, but land is the original Bitcoin.
Fact.
Because they don't make any more of it. You can't create more of it. It's always going up. Now, yeah, there's been some times in the mid and late 80s, mid 80s, early 80s where we had a really bad run and you couldn't give land away and the banks wouldn't touch it.
Right.
But you take that one blip away, other than that, it's keeping up on appreciation with the S&P 500 between 7 to 9%, depending on what piece you want to talk about, depending on where you are in the country. I mean, there's some variables here, but rule of thumb, you're between that 7 and 10% every single year.
Clockwork.
And oh, by the way, I don't get to enjoy Bitcoin. I don't get to go walk on it. I don't get to go, enjoy the time while I have on this earth to go do that. Bitcoin sits on a spreadsheet until you want to sell it. That's not the lifestyle I want to live.
Yep.
And that's for everybody to sort out. I am a very much a woodman, outdoors guy that loves to go outside and walk through the timber and obviously
get your hands dirty. I get it, man.
Yeah, exactly. And so we've chose to put our money into that category, and we're blessed enough that the land has continued to go, and I don't see it stopping.
No.
Even if you want to go buy land today, you're like, well, it's more than it was 5 years ago. Well, yeah, but you look 10 years ago, it was more than what it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So they're not making more of it, and it's just an incredible asset that I wish more people would do.
Well, and it's interesting too, Greg. I mean, you're a Midwest guy, and you grew up, farming and understanding that. But like, I'll say this over and over and over: our tagline is literally "Stand on your investment." Right? I mean, we trademark that for a reason. And when you really stop and think about it, you bring up the fact that land has historically paced or trended very similar to the S&P. I don't ever see that changing. I mean, if anything, that dynamic's got more pronounced than ever, because I don't know that there's any safer investment than land. I mean,
here is one thing that I personally had, the thing that I'm happy to share with you. I had bought some stocks a long time ago that went down to penny stocks.
Yep.
It was only worth the paper it was printed on. Well, let me tell you, you buy a 40, you buy an 80, regardless of the price or the value as it goes ups and downs, if it does happen, it will always be a 40 or an 80.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once it comes back, you can actually get your return back and more.
Yep.
But with a penny stock, when it got to penny stock, it basically evaporated. The paper wasn't worth anything.
Right.
Well, I wish I had that money and more land, because yes, the land went down at the same time, but it came back up.
Yep.
My penny stock didn't give me that chance.
She gone.
So that's when I pivoted and said, you know what? I'm done with the S&P. I'm going more in land. And it was one of the best decisions I had. Now, did I miss out on some huge home runs? Sure. But you know what? I had a hell of a lot of fun along the way, and I got to enjoy my assets along the way.
Yeah.
And those are memories. How do you put dollars and cents on memories? I don't think you can. So, I'm a huge land guy.
You perfectly sum that up. I mean, like, you are the epitome of people that we want to do business with and work with, Greg. On that note, I mean, right now we're in kind of a weird, I'm not going to say weird, but I mean, the market conditions have obviously shifted dramatically. Through COVID, everything went nuts. And now they're, it's some level of correction. I'm not saying it's the level that we've seen in the 80s, but with commodity prices where they're at, I don't know what I don't know. I mean, like, what are your people telling you, Greg? And your people might be your dad. It might be how you're looking at it. But to me, like, with every catastrophe, there's going to be some opportunity, and we're starting to see some land prices trickle down. Even the high dollar tillable starting to semi-correct
or flatten.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. And I think, I hate to say it, I don't like bringing politics into any conversation, but we don't know what's going to happen here come November.
I pray I know what's going to happen.
But. Well, I'm in the same camp. I'm flying the same flag that you're flying, my friend. But unfortunately, we don't know. And these interest rates, at the level that they're at now, cannot continue for the farming industry to continue to grow and be prosperous the way they have been in the past.
Yeah.
And if we don't get those things corrected, there's only two outcomes. Farmers are going to have to sell, and because a farmer is a farmer, he wants to farm. Whether he owns an asset to farm, he doesn't care, but he does need to own a tractor, a tiller, and all those things to farm because that's who he is. He'll
Yeah.
never change that. But he will release land to allow him to free himself up to keep his
farming.
lifestyle, to
Right.
keep farming. He'll just say, hey, I got to lease it back. So if things don't change soon, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities coming here in the next 6 to 18 months because some of these guys are going to have to release some of their farm ground. I don't like to hear that, but that is the reality of what we're going to be faced with. Now, if we get, the guy that we want in the office, I think you're going to see a lot of correction really quickly, and I hope that happens. But right now, it's pretty flat and it's pretty stagnant. But even when we do these plateaus, they don't last all that long.
No, and it's both the bottoms and the
look at
tops. Right.
when you look at the whole at a decade, they seem like they're lasting forever, but in essence they don't. What's killing us right now is the overseas grain markets.
Mm-hmm.
And if the grain market right now is nothing short of bad, but with Trump, with some tariffs and all that stuff that potentially he can correct, I think we'll see some turnarounds. If not, well, then we're going to have some more time of where we are today. But it always seems to correct itself. Every business goes through ups and downs or plateaus. It's just a matter of fact, how long can you ride it?
Right.
But the one thing I love about this industry is, for the most part, they're very wholesome people, and they're very grounded. And I'm involved in some other industries, and I can't say that.
Right.
That's the case.
Yeah, very politically correctly spoken there, Greg. So, Greg, your portfolio of land, obviously, you probably have everything soup to nuts at this point. But, I mean, obviously, you have some big tillable, and clearly you have some recreational farms, dotted throughout the Midwest. And I know you've traded some of those. Like, you've bought and traded rec farms. Of both, I mean, do you prefer one take hunting out of the equation, just from an investment perspective, buying rec ground versus ag. Where's your mind on that? You know what I mean? If I gave you $10 million today and said, Greg, go invest this, would it be rec farms? Would it be ag? Would it be some blend? Like, I'm just curious on, because you've had wins on both.
I have. I think a lot. That is a really hard question. I've never been asked it before. I think it boils down to the individual. It's not about me. It's about the individual who's listening to this and what you want out of life. And I think, if income is an important part for you, then obviously tillable is going to go to the top of the list. If you're a true outdoors guy and money is secondary, and you want to go live and, chasing whitetails, and that's what you want to do, and that's your passion, you're only on this world for so long. That song's only going to play for so long, and we don't know how long we'll get to dance to it. But when it's done, it's done. And early on in my life, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to find a balance between income and chasing my dreams of having the outdoor lifestyle. And I think everybody has to define that on their own terms, because I don't know what's behind the curtain of what they're dealing with in their own lives.
For sure.
But I will tell you this. If I could do it all over the same way, I wouldn't change a thing, because I've had so much fun on both sides of it, and so much fun in the woods, that if you said to do it today, I'd have to really pause and give it some really thought. Because on investment side, some of the stuff I bought back then, when I bought it, the farmer was more like, hey, you know what? After I signed it, he goes, I would have gave that to you because it's not worth much.
Crazy, yeah.
Because we were buying pasture ground. We were buying stuff that nobody wanted, and it wasn't producing any income. And who would have thought that the whitetail industry in the Midwest would become what it is today? Nobody saw that coming.
Right.
And now those assets are worth, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times what I paid for them. But that's been, a decade and a half ago, 20 years ago.
But you look pretty smart. You know what I mean? Like you were putting money in some massive rec farms. And
For
to your
not a lot of
point,
money though, Kurt, to
right,
be honest with you.
I get it, and that's the the Southern Iowa story, right? Why was everyone there? Well, there was giant deer, number one. Number two is ag was always the leader. So to your point, these rougher areas, these pasture farms, like whatever you want to call it, they were cheap.
They
Like I
were.
mean, even from where I'm at, Northeast Iowa to Southern Iowa, when stuff was $3,000 here, it was 800 down there.
Well, it's funny when I started looking for rec ground. I started in Buffalo County, Wisconsin,
Yep,
which, as you know, is the number one county
yep,
for Boone and Crockett.
yep.
Has been for I think 3 decades
It'll never
running.
change, in my opinion. It will always be
It's a
probably
tough argument to argue against,
yeah,
and um, it's 3.5 hours from my house. And that's what took me there. That's where I wanted to go. Well, at the time it was 3,500 to 4,200 bucks an acre.
mm-hmm.
This is 20 years ago.
Yep,
And I'm like, okay, that seems like a lot. Where, if I drew a 3.5 hour circle from where I am, where does it take me? Well, I didn't realize that it took me to Iowa.
sure,
Well, if I had another hour and a half, it took me to Southern Iowa, and that stuff was south of $1,000 an acre.
right,
So I could buy 3 acres to 3.5 acres per 1 acre in Buffalo County.
yep,
So I'm like, okay, do I want more land or less land? Do I want more of a commute, less of a commute? What do I want to do? There's a tag issue that I had to play, and obviously you have to be an Iowa resident. There's a whole lot of things that come into that whole thing. And I thought, long term, it's where I want to be anyway.
yeah,
If I fast forward, 25 to 30 years when I retire, that's where I want to be. And then I was there for about 18 months. And then it dawned on me, Kurt, that Missouri was only 20 minutes away.
weird.
How weird that was. And I'm like, gosh, 25 years from now, if I built me a house or had a place to stay, I could hunt 2 states and never leave my own bed. I said, that is like
Dream
a
world,
whitetail guy's dream.
right?
So that's what really concreted me into that part of the world, is once I realized that Missouri was over the counter, it's just 20 minutes away. I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy both at the same time. And I think my first Missouri farm was like 650 or 750 bucks an acre.
Yeah.
But it was junk. I mean, it was junk.
Well, junk relative to maybe normal, but I mean, like I remember walking out.
I'm talking about the term when I bought it. That's what everybody said it was.
Right.
It was wasted ground. Let's put it this way. I didn't hunt that farm for 3 years because
Right.
there wasn't much deer on it. We had to create the habitat. We had to create the food plots. We had to create all that stuff because it wasn't there.
But it was also beautiful. I mean, I remember just like yesterday walking that. It was brand new. Like I don't even know if you'd like been there. I think you bought it.
It wasn't long
on a recommendation or whatever.
You were one of the first boots on the ground since we bought it.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. But anyway, so that kind of brings me to the next point, Greg. Like, obviously, you guys are getting known and pretty well known at this point for the land management, and kind of cultivating a farm. And to your point, it started happening 20 plus years ago. Greg, if you had to pick a farm, or I guess maybe I won't even say a farm, an area right now today, and dude, this is wide open. It could be Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Oklahoma, whatever. Are there specific things that you are looking at inherent to even potentially looking to invest somewhere else or add to your portfolio? Like, what drives those decisions?
There are 2 different conversations on the recreational versus tillable. Tillable, it's all about a number and chasing a percent of return and understanding the value of the bushels per acre it's going to generate versus the number that you have to pay for it. So, and the taxes. Nebraska is extremely high. Illinois is extremely high. Wisconsin is extremely cheap. I'm talking relatively speaking.
Yeah.
Missouri's cheap. Iowa's cheaper. So property tax pays a big part of that. For the tillable side. On the rec side, I've really calmed down on buying more rec just because we're at the size now that I'm not so sure, unless a really good opportunity comes up, it just doesn't have the interest for me to do it at the level that I once was chasing it. But one thing I've learned is if you're going down a recreational piece, you really got to put the income aside. You really can't have both. You either got to chase.
Right.
I'm not saying they don't exist, But if you really want a good whitetail farm, you're going to have to give up some income, because habitat is your number one
It's king.
goal, and is your
Yep.
right. And with habitat, it doesn't allow you to have cash rent. So some of our best farms, in the habitat space, are about a 50-50 blend, or a 60-40 blend, where you've got cover for 60% and 40% is open, or 50-50. And the reason why I say it is because when you have for 50-50 conversation, you have the opportunity to change the landscape because of that. And this is 2.5 years of knowledge that I've learned through warm season grasses. You get to plant it where you want it. You get to change the patterns of the whitetail based on how you present those warm season grasses. And that's all based on the entry and exit of how you're going to get to these sections of the farm that you want to get to. So the cover and the timber obviously has value. Then you work around that based on the corridors and the terrain of the farm. And so when I was early in my career, I was like, man, I want 80% or 80% timber, 90% timber. That's not the case for me anymore. I want a good 60-40, 50-50, something like that blend, because I want to change the landscape of
You control it, right?
I want it to happen.
Yep.
And so it's really changed here in the last 15 years of what I've learned to change the landscape to be more successful in the whitetail space.
So you still got to answer my question. That was a very good, politically correct answer, Greg. If you had to pick a farm or an area right now to put some money in, and this can go either way, right? Because tillable, you could make an argument chasing high CSR Iowa ground doesn't pencil anymore, right? Like it's tough. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if it's making 300 bushel corn. It's $20,000 an acre, right? Same thing. Like if we're talking about a true rec farm, there are areas. You brought up Buffalo County, Wisconsin. I'd bring up Decatur County or Appanoose County, Iowa, or even up by us, honestly, is pretty damn expensive. But if you had to pick an area, I mean, would it be one of those areas, or would you be looking outside of it? Like,
it wouldn't be. I've been to Oklahoma a couple times, and I'm in love with it for a couple of reasons. One, the price per acre and the taxes, and over the counter you get $2.
I think it's the lowest taxes in the country on land.
I know it's there. I don't know exactly where it falls, but I know I am not going to argue with what you said.
Yeah.
And I was impressed. If it wasn't so damn far from where I live,
yep.
It's where I would go.
So we whittled it down to Oklahoma. Within Oklahoma, is there an area that you'd be like, I got to be here? Like, I mean, obviously everyone knows Southeast Oklahoma gets a lot of the press. Mm-hmm. And you can look at a Boone and Crockett heat map for obvious reasons. But I was just curious, like, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Greg, but I think a lot of people, especially that listen to our podcast, they are looking for potentially that next area, and I feel like it's been Kansas. I still think it is Kansas,
Kansas is another one. It's great. The only thing I don't like about Kansas, and there's some legislation conversation that needs to be folded into this conversation to verify what I'm about to say, is, last year the baiting was under a huge magnifying glass, and I'm not so sure that conversation is dead. I've through a small circle of people, I hear it's going to come up again in 25.
Sure.
Until that settles and kind of either is or out or in, I think if they pull away feeding, I think you're going to see the price of land go down probably $800 to $1,500 an acre overnight.
I don't think you're wrong.
Yep. I think overnight, if they pass that, a lot of people are going to pull out and say, I'm done.
Or start putting pivots on their farm, because it's the only way you'd have enough water to make it happen.
Yep. And so if that happens, it's going to be a potential opportunity for purchase. The other thing I don't like about Kansas is we had a piece in Kansas for 3 years, and we couldn't manage the herd because you couldn't get enough doe tags.
Yep.
And so when you're putting time, effort, energy into a farm to take it to the level that we want to take it, managing the doe herd is critical. I mean, last year we shot almost 150 does. Awesome. I mean, that's a full-time job when you think about it.
Well, you're damn right it is.
And so when you look at the whole scope of things, Oklahoma really gives you a lot of value for the dollar and gives you the DNR Fish and Game the parameters to manage a herd.
Yep.
I love Kansas. I just, with the legislation not knowing where it's going to go, I create a little bit of pause in that answer.
No, I like it, and I'm right there with you. Like Oklahoma is definitely on my short list of
Kentucky's another one.
That's same. It's on the list, right?
It's
Kentucky,
on my
Oklahoma,
list.
Indiana, all of those.
Indiana's a sleeper.
Yep.
Kentucky opens, I believe, September 1st, right?
I think they have a velvet season early. I think it goes wide open mid-September.
Right, but don't they?
And it could
don't
even
they
be
have
regionally. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I think you can go bow hunt September 1.
I know they kill velvet whitetails
Yeah.
in Kentucky every year.
Yeah, so exactly what day we'd have to look it up. But that's something that, very few, if any, states offer. So that's value.
Yep.
To get after them right away. And from the research I've done, the value there is quite substantial. The taxes are not bad. It just all depends on, how far you want to travel relative to where you live.
For
and
sure.
If you're traveling a long ways, that means less hours in the tree.
Well,
so,
Greg, it sounds like you need to invest in a jet maybe as the next thing to just navigate this whole game that we like.
I'd rather have more land than buy a jet, my friend.
Amen, brother. All right, so let's just do a hypothetical, Greg. You just bought your next farm. It's in Oklahoma. What is priority number one after you get a farm? And this could be land management. This could be, whatever. Water.
Number one.
Creating water and or enhancing water, or all the above?
All depends on the property that I bought. If it doesn't have it, or it's got a creek, what I need to identify water. If all the farms that I've purchased to date, and this is going to be a really interesting feedback from your listeners. I like running water for one reason, which is the midge.
Yep.
And it's cleaner water. It typically runs year round. I'm very convinced that they don't drink it as often as still water.
I'm with you on that.
Because it's not as convenient.
And it's cold.
And it's cold.
They instinctively drink warm water because it takes less energy to process it.
I'm not going to argue with that.
Yep.
But though all of those elements of the running water you'll find on every single piece of the properties that I have.
So for you, it's critical. I mean, when you're evaluating a farm, it is going to have running water.
It's going to have running water. And then I'm going to go out and create water where I want it. And that's for hunting purposes.
Yep.
To make it easier on them, to let them not have them travel as far. I want to dictate where they travel from and to. Yep. And water is part of that. I call it the triangle. You've got cover, you've got food, and you've got water. You've got to have those three elements to create that triangle to minimize their dispersion off of your property to go to the neighbors.
Yep.
And if I accomplish those things, then I know that I've done everything I possibly can to keep that whitetail where he is now. Yep. I can't stop him to jump the fence, but I can give him every reason not to.
Yep.
And that's my goal. And that's what we focus on. So water's number one. Then obviously we do a complete deep dive in the cover, the right cover, woody browse, TSI work, warm season grasses, and start that foundation. Because they have to drink every single day.
Yep.
They don't have to eat every day, but they've got to drink every single day.
And yeah, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head because some deer drink through what they are eating, right? You hear about a deer living in cornfields for months on end. And it's like, well, what are they drinking? And I'm like, well, they're literally getting enough water from being in that cornfield.
Yeah.
And it's hard to wrap your head around that. But I love that your number one component is water. And we didn't even formally say it, Greg, but you brought up the midge, right? And what we're talking about is EHD.
Right.
And God knows you've lived through some fairly catastrophic EHD events.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when the learning curve really was forced to learn. And that's when, we still do ponds. We're working on some now, but we've changed some of our mindset on that, which is, you have Grizzly Coolers has come out with a trough now.
I've seen that.
And we implemented 4 of them now. And literally, I have trail cameras to prove what I'm about to say. The day we put them in them, with less than 24 hours, if not that evening, they were already on them. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, the fact that they're molded and they're proprietary plastic. It's not even plastic. It's I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna call it a plastic.
It's good stuff, right?
It's there's no way for a midge to grow in that.
Well, and I think more importantly, you don't get the mudded in, pond entry, and that's where those midges thrive.
Exactly. And so when I found that stuff out, we put 4 in just this spring in key locations, huntable locations. Of course. And it's amazing what they're doing.
Now, on that note, Greg, I mean, are you guys in a rotation where you're adding water? Is there enough natural water to keep them?
We put them in spots where traditionally over the years, I know the farm well, that usually was a water hole or stagnant water because of runoff.
Yep.
And so I'm like, okay, we don't have to worry about filling them. We're going to put it right here because the runoff, it's always wet.
Sure.
And so we put them in those type of spots.
Perfect. I like that answer. And I do think water's as effective as food done properly.
Yeah.
Nice.
It is.
Nice. So next area, I love that. Oklahoma. Everyone heard it first. Greg Glesinger is going to go to Oklahoma and dominate giants there too. Weird. Current state, Greg. Let's talk briefly about hunting season, then I'll turn you loose, man. I didn't mean to get this long-winded, but I love these conversations.
Oh, I got all afternoon, buddy.
Right on. Hunting season 2024 into 2025. What are you chasing? What's shaking? What states are you hitting? Are you going out west? I mean, all the things hunting for this season. What's coming with HuntWorks?
Well, we just got back from a 25-day, 27-day run out west. We went to South Dakota for antelope, which was the first time I've ever harvested an antelope.
Nice, congrats.
Got it done with a bow. That was very interesting and very different.
Now, I don't want to steal the thunder of the show and stuff, Greg, but like spot and stock, water hole, what was the...
Spot and stock was the first part, first day, and then we had we were blessed to find this ranch of 17,000 acres, and the rancher, a true cowboy, I'm talking legit.
I get it.
Said, hey, you know what? This is where you need to be. Here's some suggestions. And he gave me one that I looked at him twice. He said it to me again. He said, if you go over and you get up on that knoll and you look at that flat spot over there, you're going to see a green spot about 1.5 acres to 2 acres big. It's a bunch of millet. And he goes, if you look around you, it's the only green patch in this whole dang place.
Right.
And I'm like,
AKA,
duly noted.
Get there. Yeah.
And so we went and set up a pop-up blind for the second half of the day, had some really good encounters, and came back the next day. And that millet field is what brought them to us. Because as you know, antelope can see, I think it's 22 times better than we can.
They're insane.
It's like they can see, I think it's 4.5 or 5 miles.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's flat and they can see it. So I'm not saying you can't spot and stock because guys do it all the time. It's very difficult with a bow. And our terrain was not bow friendly. We had some rolling hills, but a lot of it was flat.
Sure.
And so we had to regroup, going, okay, spot and stock's really not going to work here. It's too flat. We need to go to that millet field, put a pop-up. And by the afternoon of day 2, we had one in the truck. And I didn't realize they're that small, Kurt. I had no idea.
Well, and what's weird, and I think most people have, but if you haven't really like looked at and analyzed a speed goat, dude, they're like aliens. Like,
they're so unique.
To your point, like they can see incredibly well. It's their number one defense. But even like where their eyes are relative to their head and stuff, I don't know.
They can see, I think it's 330 degrees.
Yeah, it's something crazy, right? I mean,
it's almost 360.
You'd have to be like sitting on their back for them not to be able to see you.
Pretty much.
But anyway, kudos on that. I've taken a antelope. Not that I've pursued them heavily, but they are a fun animal to hunt. But yeah, to your point, I'm guessing you threw it over your shoulder and walked back to the truck.
It's only about 80 pounds.
Yeah, they're not very big.
I got next to him, and I've always seen him from 100 yards away with glass, and I've never had the opportunity to be feet.
Yeah.
from them. And I got up to them like, I didn't realize they're this small.
Yeah. Small
And
target, but they're weak too. Like if you,
they are.
this is going to sound bad, but like
Yeah.
if you hit one,
Yeah.
almost regardless of where you hit it, your odds are pretty high that that animal's going to expire.
It's not what my experience was, but I've been told that by multiple people.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So you got the antelope thing out of the way.
Yeah. So then we headed down to Colorado, and we chased mule deer, and we're lucky enough to tag one almost towards the end of the hunt, and he was really nice.
Good for you.
Spot and stock. Slipped it through. He was bedded in a timber. Slipped it through a size of a baseball size hole, and it was just, one of those circumstance things where we're going back to camp, and we saw one. I'm like, well, that's his buddy. He's got to be close.
Yeah.
And we just, stop and glass. And there he's right in this thick ass timber.
Of course.
And we got, I don't know, I think it was 35-ish. And we were above him, and there was a little knoll, so I could use that knoll for us to work back and forth to get a good angle where I'm going to slice this thing through. And we were lucky enough to throw an arrow in this little hole, and that kind of ended that chapter. And then we went to air.
You started 2 for 2. You got the antelope. Now you got the mule deer. I love it. I love it.
Yep. And then we packed our bags and headed to Arizona. And the place I hunted, they have a minimum restrictions. It's an Indian reservation, White Mountain Apache.
I've watched you hunt that place, previous seasons.
Yeah, it is a magical place, but in all candid reality, you can't shoot. Well, you can shoot south of 350, but you won't be welcome back.
Sure, they're looking for the top end. Yeah.
Yep, and so you have to be willing to walk away empty to go there, and that's all part of the agreement. And so we had many encounters right up to within 5.9 yards. We had a 330, 340 bull, and I had him dead to rights 8 million times, but the guy's like, he ain't gonna hit 350.
Yeah.
And so we ended up going home empty, but crazy experiences. But we saw a ton of 310s to 350 ish,
and those are awesome animals.
They're incredible, and I would love to harvest any one of them.
Sure.
I would have took the first one given the opportunity, but I want to come back. So we came home empty. But it's an amazing place. But that is the downfall of that place. Well,
dude, on your Western rotation, if you went 2 for 3, Greg, that's pretty good.
Well, all with a bow. So I was pretty happy with it. It worked out well. You always wish you could do more, but it's I think the success rate in archery out west is like, depending on the state, it's anywhere from 12 to 15%.
Yep, and I think that's probably even on the higher end. I mean, I know some states are better than others, and it's all relative to the draw and some of the luck that goes involved with even having the ability to hunt there. But yeah, dude, it's way low. It
is. Yeah.
But but when your game's getting close, not how far you can shoot, that's why we do it. So
I know, and that's what I kept telling myself is, hey, once you break that 60, 50-yard mark, you've won.
You're in the bubble.
If you're there and they don't know you're there, that's a victory.
Yes.
Whether you tip them over is a bonus.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to do.
Dude, I totally get it. So now you're back home in the Midwest.
Yeah.
What's next? I mean, Iowa literally opens tomorrow. You guys are already open in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Missouri's open.
Yep. So Casey killed a Missouri here just 3 days ago.
I seen that.
3 or 4 days ago.
Yep.
And so we're leaving tomorrow morning, dark 30, to be in the set tomorrow afternoon in Iowa. And
big cold front blowing in, buddy.
We got 1 day of goodness.
Yep.
1 day of goodness. And so hopefully my season is focused around one animal. He's for sure 8 years old. I can strong debate that he's 9. He is one that is worth the time and energy, and we've been watching him for some time. And so we put a lot of work into this part of the farm all year long. We've done everything possible to make this opportunity come together. Now it's just, will he be there and will he show up and will he crop, deer. So
right. Will he play the game?
Exactly. So we're sure going to give it the college try, and it won't be because of lack of effort. I can guarantee you that.
Now I have to ask, Greg, because I'm whacked out of my mind when it comes to shed antlers. But what's the shed history with this deer? You got multiple years?
We do. Yeah, we do. It's crazy because the fact that he's jumped substantial in inches, it just doesn't make any sense. So I really want to tip him over from the biological sense,
Sure.
because I really want to understand his true age the best that I can. We have trail pictures all the way back, but he's blown up, and I don't know why a deer blows up between 7 and 8 or 8 and 9. It's not 10 inches; it's substantial.
Wow.
And so I don't.
Has it been pretty gradual along the way,
It
Greg?
has.
Yeah.
It's been a typical whitetail
Yeah.
until now, and
There was an
I don't.
explosion. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I think there's a couple things playing right into your hand on maybe explaining why, right? Like we had a very, very light winter
True.
in Iowa last year. And then this year, I would argue, you went from a pretty severe drought last year in southern Iowa to this year being, kind of back to Garden State, right? Like,
It was very wet.
exactly. So I kind of feel like, it's the perfect storm.
But not every deer did that, though, Kurt.
No, and I think all of it actually boils back to genetics. Like,
Yeah.
inherently, it's all genetics. But then to have a year or, a 12-month window where not only did he get to recover more than normal because we had a light winter, now he had groceries like beyond groceries this year.
He did.
So I don't know, and I'm no biologist, Greg. This is all my guess, but you're probably the 30th person I've talked to this year already that has a deer that exploded. And whether that's the 3 to 4 year jumper, the 4 to 5, to your point, this deer's 8 or 9 years old. My prediction, and I'll go on record saying this, my prediction is there are going to be some absolute magnums coming out of Iowa this year, reminiscent to like what we've seen in the early 2000s. Just my prediction.
I can see. No, and I understand why you're saying it, and I wouldn't argue against the why you're saying it, because of everything you're saying makes complete sense to me. It'll be interesting to see how the year folds out, but
you never know.
Yeah, I think, without saying, we're all blessed that we have this opportunity, because with the people in the White House now, it seems like who knows if that's ever going to be taken away from us.
So that could be a whole nother podcast.
Yeah,
because I'm with you 100% on that.
But it's no, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be an interesting fall. So I just got an opportunity yesterday to go on a moose hunt in Saskatchewan.
Do it.
And so I know they're substantially smaller than Alaska and Yukon and all those type of things. I think they're anywhere from like a plus or minus a 40-inch to 50-inch moose, but I really want to get one with a bow.
Yep.
And so we may be doing that mid-October when the whitetail stuff slows down. So
yep.
I got to get that figured out here in the next 3 or 4 days. But
it
sounds like a really, really neat opportunity. I know I saw your mega giant moose. Kudos
Greg,
to you.
Thanks for saying that, brother. But that's an average bull in Alaska, or damn sure average where I was in Alaska. But I can't even, we got a whole podcast coming out about that story because it was a true DIY. I was there with a couple of buddies. Awesome. Anyway, we don't. This is about you, not me. But I'm telling you, having now moose hunted, I 1,000,000% want to do it again, even though it's grueling and hard and the shittiest
and
hunt
expensive.
I've ever. Well, that debatable is all I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
In a true DIY fashion, I'm not saying it like the largest expense I incurred was getting there. Like literally, the float plane's expensive. Obviously, you got to have gear, but that's something you would have anyway.
Yeah. Right.
But you don't have to spend $50,000 to go kill a big moose. Is all I'm telling you.
Well, I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, we'll talk. We'll sidebar on that. But dude, go moose hunting. Like it'll blow your mind how big of an animal they are. Like I've shot.
They're a damn minivan. They're massive. What are they, like 1,900 pounds?
I don't even know. All I know is we took 10.5+ plumb full meat bags off my bowl. I mean plumb full, 80, 90 pounds of crack. Do the math backward on that. Like, it took two guys, me and my buddy Pete. I had caped it. We'd cut it off as far up as we could, but just to carry the head and cape and the antlers, miserable. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it weighed. A lot.
Yeah,
and obviously they're not exactly, like, built for dragging through the brush. There's a reason they're 9 foot tall.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the old saying is, once you kill them is when the work starts.
Oh, dude, yeah. I had a hard reality with that, but take that opportunity, man. If you get to go chase moose, you'd love it. And in my opinion, they are made for getting shot with bow and arrows. Just my 2 cents.
It's what I would like to do. It's what I'd like to do.
Well, good luck. I hope you do it. And I hope you dump your big Iowa whitetail over before this thing even airs. Because if you do,
so.
We'll have to do a little retro.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
for sure.
Cool.
For sure. Well, we only got 1 day of decent temps for the next week to 10 days.
Might be all it takes. He hasn't seen any pressure.
True.
You know,
it's true. It only takes one hunt to get them. But
that's right.
It'll be interesting because then it gets back warm again. So
I'm crossing my fingers. I pray I get a text from you tomorrow night about 15 minutes before dark that he's tipped over.
God, I tell you what, I'd love to send it to you.
Well, good. Greg, is there anything else you want our guests to know? I mean, I would strongly encourage everyone to get out, like, follow, subscribe, start watching HuntWorks. I mean, if you want to see what Greg's doing day in and day out with his team on these farms, it's like an open book. They are literally giving you all the answers to the test on why they do what they do and when they do it and all the things. If there's anything beyond that, Greg, you want the listeners to take away from the podcast, now's your chance, man.
Yeah, we're on Sportsman's Channel every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central. We're on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, HuntWorks, HUNTWORX. Appreciate a follow and a subscribe on our YouTube channel. That'd be much appreciated. But our number one goal is to make you a better hunter. Yep. And Kurt said it best. I'm taking, 25 years of mistakes and sharing them right away. We're not holding anything back. And if we think it has value, we share it. And our team is very much committed to that goal. And we want everybody to experience what we're experiencing. And, the best way to learn is listen to others people's mistakes and then make your own. And then capitalize on those and adjust and do the work. Yep. You can't be successful without doing the work. So, and we're going to show you what you need to do to minimize time and financial commitment. And that's the two biggest things: is shorten that learn curve the best that we can.
Absolutely. No, and you guys are doing a great job. Kudos to you and the whole team. You've put together some badasses in one spot. I love it.
Yeah, they're a great group of fellows.
Good stuff. Well, Greg, thanks for all your time today, buddy. Looking forward to your guys' success this season and watching it all unfold.
Well, I appreciate the time, Kurt. It's always nice to catch up, man. Friendship's more than anything. And keep me up to form on how you do this fall. I look forward to your big texts. I know there's always a giant or two in your back pocket, too.
Well,
so
even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while.
Oh, that's
Greg.
not true. That's
very true. I'd take luck over skill all day long. But Greg, we'll wrap it up there. I appreciate you, buddy, and like I said, we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, man. Take care.